Representative Emanuel, we can bring in Representative Putnam, so let's do that now. And Representative Putnam, thank you for being with us. Obviously, he's been the chairman of the House Republican Conference and on the other side of it, so I'm in the middle of you guys, so you can't actually literally reach out and fight if you wanted to. But Representative Putnam, you heard Representative Emanuel's response there in terms of where things stand. He said it's palpable. He didn't use that word, but I don't think he'd disagree with it, that we're having momentum and things are moving forward. Would you agree?
Clearly, momentum is being made. The negotiations are moving forward, and I think that you will see a proposal that is modified from the original Paulson plan, that is better for the taxpayer, that does reflect some bipartisan consensus on the reforms that are necessary and giving the Treasury the tools they need to restore liquidity. But as anyone who's ever watched Wall Street or been a party to these negotiations knows, sometimes there's a time to walk away from a deal to guarantee that you're going to get a better deal. And when we started seeing things like 20% of the upside going to fund left-wing groups, labor being guaranteed a seat on boards of directors, that's taking away from the primary function that we are all serving here, which is to avert a financial crisis, not inject politics into a necessary reform vehicle that's moving through this process on a rapid basis.
And Representative Putnam, can we say modifications, and I know that there is agreement on both sides of the aisle as to some of the fundamental principles. I know everyone's in agreement, at least in principle, on having oversight and some modifications to or restrictions on executive compensation. But this idea of government-sponsored insurance that was put out by your party last night, can we really take that off the table here?
I think that it's going to be a tool that Treasury will have at their disposal.
If they
I think
choose
that it
to
will
use
give them the flexibility to use it. There will be some illiquid assets that need to be purchased. There will be some where loans are more appropriate, and there will be some illiquid assets where the government-sponsored insurance makes sense. We want to have the Treasury and the Fed to have all the flexibility and discretion they need to make this work. We've got one shot here to make this work.
Adam, let me just say, as you know, and you and I have talked about this, the fact is that till date, whether it's been AIG, Freddie and Fannie decision, the Bear Stearns decision, or the Lehman decision, every one of these ad hoc decisions haven't worked. It requires this proposal with maximum force in here to not only get the market's confidence back and the liquidity back in the market, but what we've added, which is the very things that everybody by Thursday night and Friday night last week had set as the priorities. And that's already been added when we started this.
Maximum force and maximum flexibility, I think, are two things that need to be in here. And you know, as we've discussed, there's a lot of bipartisan consensus on this, and the markets need to understand we're going to work through the weekend. We are prepared to do whatever it takes to get this done before the markets open on Monday.
Well, I think the key thing, and as both Adam and I are saying, Aaron, is that is maximum force and the confidence that that will restore. As I said, what we wanted to make sure in this process where taxpayers were protected, we believe we've gotten that. Don't get up from the table. I understand the theater of that, but that was a very risky thing to do when the country is watching and asks you to be responsible.
We don't need a lecture on negotiations. The bottom line was that the White House, the Senate Democrats, and the House Democrats were negotiating. Now we have all of the parties at the table who needed to have been there at the beginning, and we're moving forward.
All right, hold on. And politics out of the table here. Can each of you just tell me, and you're here dealing with your caucuses, you're both leaders here, so you're both going to be people who deliver votes. What our viewers want to know on CNBC is, are you going to have a bill signed before the opening bell rings on Monday morning? Is that each of your belief and intent?
Yeah, well, I'm going to say this. Democrats, since day one, when they were briefed by Secretary Paulson and Chairman Bernanke about the severity of this situation, have been responsible and have taken this seriously and trying to get something of this magnitude done in a short period of time, and we're going to stay being responsible and accountable.
That's all well and fine. They have the votes to have done this on Monday. They were having the same gag reflex on the Treasury proposal as Republicans were. That's why we haven't done it. It takes a week. It has taken a week for Congress to digest this, to understand the options that are out there for the solution. It is our intent to have a bill that is good for the taxpayers done by Monday. But if the Democrats wanted to have passed this, they had the votes to have passed it immediately. They didn't because there was a bipartisan concern about doing this the right way.
Before we go, and this is a quick question, I'm sorry to both of you, but here's the question. We're hearing, obviously, constituents across the country aren't a fan of this, and maybe a better job selling it could have been done by various people. But here's the bottom line. If you knew you might lose your seat because you were voting for this plan, would you do it anyway because you think it's in the best interest of the nation?
Yes.
We're going to work to produce a bill that is in the best interest in the nation so that we can avert a financial crisis.
Let me just say one thing.
Yes.
The American people actually have figured out the problem unbelievably well, and they've analyzed it. And that is, they know that the financial industry have come up with a series of instruments they don't understand, and that's a problem. They know people were getting in homes that were way over their ski tips they couldn't afford. And they know that the government, because it cut regulators and regulations and the funding for them, were not cops on the beat. And they blame all three for that. And I do believe they know this. They don't like the proposal, but they know something has to get done to avert the economic catastrophe that sits on the other side of this. They're being very commonsensical to the American people about this.
All right, well, Representatives Putnam and Emanuel, thanks so much to both of you, and I hope you'll still be friends when it's all done.
We still are.
You bet.
All right, and this leads to our email question of the day. Are we rushing this bailout? Tell us what you think at streetsigns@cnbc.com. And next on the program today, investors running from risk, and that means there are opportunities. We're going to tell you some ideas. And on the day of the biggest bank failure in American history, by a huge margin, we have the former chief financial officer